Hello, artisans. I'm AJ the Joy Weaver, and I'm really excited about our theme this month of creativity. If you've heard me speak at all, you know that I think creativity is helpful for a lot of things. So I want to give us a few tips today on how we can navigate this month of diving into creativity without all the voices speaking up. I know quite a few of us are just kind of tired and exhausted, and that's okay. So last month we talked about curiosity, right? And if you're new here, welcome. Check out all of last month is up on the Mighty Networks page, and in Facebook, you just got to scroll through in our group and look under topics to find the different things. We talked about curiosity being the what if, like what if this, or what would it be like if, and kind of following that trail and asking ourselves those questions and being willing to ask those questions. And one of the things we talked about is a lot of people are not asking these questions. Like, it's easier to stay safe and in this certain box of way it's always been than to think about, okay, if there's these other options, we also have to account for we never did those options back then when we really wanted to, but we said, no, it's safer over here. Just putting a few pieces of puzzle in my own brain with saying that. And that can be really hard, right? And kind of being like, okay, we're going to do it differently now. And then the next part is creativity, because creativity is the active participation and follow through of curiosity. If curiosity, two C words, if curiosity is the what if or what would it be like question, then creativity is the why not. It's the answering to the why not question and trying it and kind of figuring out what works and what doesn't. A lot of people are afraid of failure, but if you think about success, it's you're learning, on all the different things that success can mean to different people, right? You're learning all of these things, and failure, quote unquote, is figuring out what doesn't work as well and kind of tinkering out. So it never has to be this giant, big, like lose your job, fail kind of situation. It can also be like, hey, I played with oils, like oil paints, and it wasn't my favorite, or charcoal paints and they weren't my favorite, or I tried a Zumba class and no thank you. It doesn't have to be, oh, I tried out for this huge orchestra because I'm just picking up violin and I don't know why I'm picking all these expensive things, and I didn't make it, which means I'm a failure, right? We can set these big expectations of, if I do it once, I have to be perfect at it. And a lot of things in life are just practicing. And the willingness to pick up a pen or to try something new can feel really intimidating, but it can also feel thrilling. And there's the way our bodies process emotion, right? Anxiety and excitement have like sister emotions, kind of that like, oh, okay, and like, okay. And so sometimes it's a renaming it in our body of saying, hey, I witness you. Yep, this is a new thing. We're nervous about how it's going to go, but it's okay. We're going to try it, and I'm here along with you. You're inside you. Two things. So we're going to get into inner critic in a minute. So I want you to think of your innermost voice, the voice that is excited about new things and possibilities, and is like, oh, wouldn't it be cool or wouldn't it be nice if, oh man, I would love to try that. Like, that's our inner voice. That's our goodness inside that's excited about things and turned on by life in that way, right? And then we have all of these other loud voices of like, you're never good enough, or like, that's dumb, or like, you're dumb, and like, who do you think you are? And those voices can get really, really loud, right? And they can get on loops and they can get repetitive. So that's your inner critic. So we're going to get there in a second. But I wonder if we can imagine that our inner voice and that inside of us has never abandoned us before. And our bodies may be giving us like, oh, it's not safe to do that because last time I tried out and stepped out, like, you left me behind. You were just like, oh, well, I didn't mean to do that. Like, you kind of took a risk and then you kind of like reneged on yourself, right? You kind of like, oh, well, I wasn't good anyways. We kind of like toss ourselves to the side before other people can. And I want to invite us to bring ourselves along, to think that you are your guardian of your body and your life and your inner voice. And so you're walking alongside each other, because you're inside, or they, whoever they are, they're advocating for you and they've never abandoned you. Outside us has made a wide variety of decisions that have probably felt like abandonment in the past, because of things we've had to do. But this inside is always there. So I just want to give you that idea that you're not alone in this, even if you feel alone. Does that make sense? There's like regular outside you, and then there's inside you. Inside you is team you all of the time. Okay, moving on. So we have our inner critic who's like, oh, hey, like this would be neat. And then we have inner voice, sorry. Then we have our inner critic. And our inner critic is the voice that tells us all of those angry things that we think are real. And this is also the voice of perfectionism. This is the voice of anxiety. And maybe you separate them out too, right? Because anxiety can be its own beast. Depression can be its own beast. So maybe you have a couple different ones. Here's what I want us to do. If you can write down, grab your journals and look. Yes, good encouragement for this week. How do I do this? There we go. Have fun, innovate, encourage, be honest, inspire, experience, and be kind. I want you to imagine that the voice that is not kind in your brain, let's put a picture of someone else or something else on it. Because a lot of times we're saying, oh, I'm a perfectionist, I'm just mean, but that's just who I am. Like, I got to push myself because who else will? And it's like, oh, like these are learned voices. A 3-year-old does not have this voice playing inside their head. And if they do, it's because somebody else has been yelling at them. But we're not inborn with this angry voice inside of us that's saying like, don't try that, or like, don't do this new thing. Fear's there because it's innate, right? Tadpoles have fear. But that's a different discussion as well. So the voice that is kind of cruel or kind of mean, what could they be? Could be a villain from a cartoon book or a movie like Clarice, I can't remember her name. It was like from the Percy Jackson novels. And she's like the son of Mars, and she's just like this badass warrior, but she's also kind of a bull. So yeah, maybe it's based off of a couple different people. If you don't want to make it like your mom or something like that, you can make them a character. That's similar to your mom, right? Like a similar age or height or type. It doesn't have to be a person you love. It also could be, or a teacher or a kid from elementary school. Yeah. Mine, her name is Brenda, and she's like a 60, 70-year-old lady who has very strict views on the Bible and who I am and how I'm a horrible Christian, all this stuff, right? So that's her. So once you got your inner critic, give them the name, whether it's Rob, Bob, or Carol, or Kelly, or I don't know why they all start with K. So you got your inner critic. You can also pause this, so I don't need to wait. Okay, so now that you have your inner critic, we need to do something with this. So it's not your voice, right? We got that inch of space between you and them, because when we think it's ourselves, we're just like, well, I'm innately bad. This is me. Oh my gosh. Oh, I think I have the hair on my face, sorry. Okay, we think this is innately me. So if we can get that inch of space to say, no, this is not, this is a learned voice, we can defend ourselves, right? But sometimes we're tired and we don't have any energy to defend, and we don't know what to say, right? Because the thing about inner critics is they catch up on heart wounds that have been created because people have said things that are so similar to the truth that we feel like they're true. They're also so vague that we can't do anything about it. Like, you're too much, or you're not enough, or you're dumb. And you're like, well, I wasn't good at this math thing, but maybe I might also be dumb, and that's why I could never figure this out, right? Like, oh, hey, math just might not be your strong suit. Let's work on this to make it better, versus you're dumb, you're never going to figure this out. Like, you can't really refute. You could just be like, no, I'm smart, I can figure this out. But if you keep getting told that sooner or later, part of you is going to believe it. And then it gets in the backward, right? It's an earworm. So you need an inner defender. So who could your inner defender be? And this is somebody who maybe you trust or who has your back. It could be a little sister. It could be a parent. It could be a grandparent. It could be me. It could be a character from a TV show. So who is an inner defender that would speak on your behalf to say true things and be like, actually, no. Mine is a guy named Tim who I met at a conference. And I think I actually need to create a new defender because I have different things being spoken lately that are getting on my nerves. But Tim is just like, actually, Brenda, like AJ's pretty rad and her business is cool. And like, she does good stuff and it's applicable and she's just fine. And he's like, wise and has white hair. And so it's like, obviously Tim knows everything. So I don't know, Brenda, like go eat your stale fruitcake. Let me be. If you want to come to 10, you let me know. Right. I have a friend who her inner critic is like an angry, like bitter college guy that like always knows everything and always has an article to back it up and is always looking for debate and all this stuff. And you can never get a word in edgewise. And her inner defender is a 6-year-old girl who's just like, this is dumb. You're dumb. Like, have you even seen Kelsey? She's rad. Like, she's cool. Like, don't be weird. Don't stop this. Like, and she'll just like, I mean, you've talked to a 6-year-old girl, right? There's no reasoning there. So, and so that's her inner defender. So it could be anyone. So write down, who is your inner defender? Good work. Pause if you need more time. Next, if you've seen Harry Potter and Hufflepuff here, although I am wearing Slytherin colors today, there's a spell they use called Ridiculous. And they use Ridiculous for a boggart. And a boggart is a magical creature who takes the form of your worst fear. So for one of the kids, it's a giant spider, which is absolutely terrifying. And they yell the spell, and then the spider has little roller blades and is like all over the place. Another one is an angry teacher that they have, and then he goes ridiculous and then turns him into essentially like a drag queen of like his grandmother, or the teacher like dressed up in his grandmother's clothes, and it's hilarious, right? And so if we use the ridiculous spell on your inner critic, what would happen? And if it's somebody you love and you're like, oh, I don't want to make them weird like that, maybe what's a way that they could also have some more understanding? If you're like, oh, I don't want to make them silly, I don't want to demean them, maybe you can alter it somehow so it's somebody else, or maybe you have some other way that gives you a little more distance in that, right? So maybe if they're like in a courtroom and like way high up, like in a Wizard Gamma kind of situation, maybe instead they're like in a Judge Judy courtroom and you're like, this isn't really legit. Does that make sense? Okay. So when you have those, I want you to write down, and you can pause me if you need to, write down some of the things that your inner critic says to you. And you don't have to tell me, you don't have to put it in the Joy Guild. If you want to, go for it though. And I will, when I post this too, write down some of the things that your inner critic says to you. And remember, we're writing this down here present. So you don't have to like renege into it, because right, it kind of sucks us in like quicksand sometimes. So be present here, know you're safe, know you're good. What are the things that your inner critic says to you? Write it down, because now we got that extra space, right? Okay, now listen for your inner defender. What are they saying in response to this? Because when the moment comes, when anxiety and when the inner critic come running around and they start yelling things, we can't think straight, right? And so if we have these kind of phrases and words already in our brain, we can say, you know what, actually, no, because Tim says this, or I am this. Something I've been repeating lately is God is good and God made me. God is good and God made me. Or my knowing is rooted in good. Like my nudge is good, my knowing is rooted in good. And I'm okay. So sometimes it's just simple things that we can repeat, or it might be, something that anxiety might say, or an inner critic might say is like, everybody hates you or nobody likes you. You probably have like at least one person that you can be like, this person doesn't like me. You could use the people in the Joy Guild, or this person doesn't not like me. This person likes me. Sorry, double negative there. List off the people in the Joy Guild. List off somebody that you would have connected with that you've never met that wrote a book that like you are like, you know what, they would believe in me. They think I'm cool. You can use them as like, you know what, Liz would think I'm cool. And Tara thinks I'm cool. And AJ thinks I'm nice. And this person thinks. You can kind of use that as a barrier too of like, actually, it's not everyone. It's this person. And remember how last week with curiosity, I talked about the open door, like in a completely black room, and then you crack open the door and there's a little bit of light. It's kind of the same thing we're doing with an inner critic, because the inner critic will just get on the loop. And so we're given some pause. So it cracks just enough that we're like, oh, wait, that's not true. And that's not me. That's my inner critic. Why are you doing this? Like, do you need a nap? Do you need a snack? Yeah. Does that make sense? Okay. Let me know if you have any questions about this. Okay. Creativity doesn't just look like painting, and it doesn't just look like art or dancing or singing or poetry or anything like that. Creativity is following through on curiosity. So remember our list from last month of curiosity of things you might be curious about. This month, our Joy Guild challenge, which I'll make another video about and post, is taking one of those things and exploring it a little more in depth, or trying something entirely new. If you're like, I don't really want to touch my list, what is something that you're like, this would be cool, but like I couldn't or I shouldn't? Go to the Dollar Tree, grab what you want to make, a wreath. I know I said it doesn't have to be artistic, but you could also make a meal if you're like, I've never been able to do this and I'd like to try. I got a book of drawing new flowers because I want to get good at realistic flowers. And I was practicing yesterday. Creativity is just practicing something new. So let's kind of keep that in mind this month. 2 book recommendations, I'll throw these in the Joy Guild as well, is Big Magic by Liz Gilbert. And I just re-listened to the audiobook today and yesterday, and it's so good. It is just medicine for the soul. If you are feeling overwhelmed, friends, yes, listen to this book. And the second book is The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. It's a 12-week journey. Absolutely changed my life. It's the reason why I have a book. It's the reason why Enjoy Productions exists with the name that it does. Like, it's behind so many shifts in my life that I would highly recommend if you're looking for a kind journey to take of growing. That's a great resource and is helpful in kind of figuring out our brains about creativity and the idea that we have to suffer behind it. This month, I just so want to encourage you, because there's so much going on in the world. Let's give ourselves play space. Play space. This is different than gray space, right? Gray space is just like, okay, like, whew. But I want you to carve out even 15 minutes a day to do something that lights you up. What is it? Maybe it's making like some herbs or something that you can put in the bath, or going on a walk and arranging some rocks, or just taking in outside, or free writing. You know me, always free writing. But let's allow ourselves the space to play without any promises of performativity going behind it. You don't have to show it to anybody. Joy Guild's always a safe space. But let's play a little this month. Yeah. So sing your little song, and I'll talk to you soon. And I'll post the dates for everything this month as well later.